Hi everyone, welcome to a very special Broken Meeple video. This is a little different from my usual fare, and basically I got into an interview with Christopher Badell, who is better known for designing, or being one of the designers, for Sentinels and the Multiverse. Now, if you have kept up with me in any way, shape or form, you know that Sentinels and the Multiverse has, in all but one occasion, been my #1 favourite game of all time. Could it still be this year? You'll have to wait and see. But I love this game. I mean, you know me, I am a superhero fan through and through. I love superheroes, I love everything about superheroes. Marvel and DC, the works. The only thing is that I'm not the biggest aficionado when it comes to their lore because I never read the comic books. Most of my knowledge comes from TV and movies, to be honest. But the Sentinels and the Multiverse just completely sung to me. I know I've used that phrase a lot, but this is the dictionary definition of that sort of game. I played it since buying my first enhanced edition box set, like the base set, and then I was hooked, bought every expansion, went into Kickstarter. I've got a signed poster on that wall over there with like a lot of the artwork signed by the designers themselves, and of course this collector's edition, which was a complete money sink. I literally got it as a birthday treat, and you know, oh, look at all this stuff. I have everything you could ever possibly want for Sentinels, all the tokens, all the heroes, all the villains. I got it all. It's a superhero co-op game of my dreams, and that's essentially what the game is. It is a game that can be played up to 5 players. You can play it solo, multi-handed, or 2-player with 2 heroes each, that kind of thing. And it's very much the standard superhero setup of you're heroes, you go up against a villain, and you try and take the villain out. The thing that latched me onto this though was, firstly, it was easy to get into. There's a lot of cool strategies that you can come up with for this game, and certainly there's a lot of bookkeeping involved with some of the card effects that go off, but it's so simple from a rule set perspective of going, right, you know, play a card, use a power, draw a card, next turn, and so on. But also the fact that when you took a hero, you took their deck. It was their deck, your deck. So if I want to play Legacy, I take the Legacy deck, and it functions completely differently to the Wraith deck, to the Tachyon deck, to I'm trying to think, the Unity deck, the Captain Cosmic deck, and by there. So you know, it just made you feel unique, and it gave you that superhero theme and flavor with a divisive comic book style artwork, which, like I say, I was fine with the old artwork. It was comic book style, you know, kind of like hand-drawn comic book style, but some people didn't like it. Like I say, to each their own. But oh, I just fell in love with this. With all the new heroes and villains and environments that came out, I just fell in love with it. But this is essentially my collection, so all of this in this box contains everything that there is for the official Sentinels in the Multiverse, and these two they only contain fan-made stuff. So fans got together and made a set called the Cauldron, and these 2 boxes contain all the Cauldron stuff. So it's suffice to say I have a lot for this game. I love this game, and I will never ever grow tired of this game. So it's one of those things where it just sort of took over my life in a sense. Now the reason I'm explaining this now is because of the purpose of this video. I got to have a 1-hour interview with Christopher Badell, who has, like I said, one of the designers, because what Greater Than Games are now doing is, after 10 years of this being in operation, they are producing a definitive edition of it. So they're essentially reprinting the entire series from the ground up. They'll still use the same characters because they've got like a whole universe based on this, but essentially the artwork has now been updated. They've streamlined a lot of the rules. They've tried to make it easier for the players to get into. They're going to add new heroes and that from the lore as time goes on. And essentially it's a revamp of the whole series to say, look, we love this game. It's 10 years of our life, but we realize it's 10 years old. So here it is now for a modern audience. And I believe on the 30th of March, they're going to do a very small Kickstarter for this, which is essentially a pre-order. You know, it's like, here it is, no stretch goals, none of that weird stuff that Kickstarter normally does. It's like, here it is, this is what you're getting, you want to get into it. And honestly, I'm excited, very excited. At first I was a little bit hesitant because I thought, well, I already own all this stuff. Do I really need to get in on the definitive edition? Am I just going to feel bad that I'm losing like sight of this stuff, whereas, you know, while I get the new stuff? I had a few questions, shall we say. Well, I'm glad to say that all my questions have been answered via the interview, and I hope that you guys will get some love from this interview as well. This is me on a Zoom chat talking to Christopher. He's doing most of the talking because I was kind of sitting there and listening, and to be fair, I've never met a designer who's more enthusiastic about his work than Christopher is, because honestly, it's like watching a child enter a second childhood. It really is quite infectious. But he's definitely very passionate about this project. He's very passionate about the new edition in general, and I would love to just sit down and have a drink with this guy to talk about superheroes in general, because when we get to the end and we start talking just about who our favorite superhero is, it's clear he's read a lot more comic books than I have. So I could pretty much just sit down and have a drink with him and just talk about nothing but superhero comic book lore and just learn stuff, because I've never had a chance to read it. But just wanted to give you the context of sort of roughly what the game is, how much I love it, just so that you don't feel like I'm going on a mad fanboy streak with this interview or anything like that. And like I say, let it speak for itself. I'll probably talk about this in sort of sporadic moments on the next podcast in the news, just to talk about the upcoming Kickstarter. But for now, I hope you enjoyed the interview, and I'll see you on the next video. Take care. Bye for now. Definitely had to jump in on this one though, because Sentinels, I think people are starting to get sick and tired of me putting it on my top 100 list quite often. So it's been one of those games.
I understand. I feel much the same way about it. It's, I mean, I have played it probably, I don't know, maybe there might be people in the world who've played it more than I have now, but it's hard to say because with all the playtesting and everything as well. But it's one of the reasons that inspired Definitive Edition. It was like, okay, this game is still good and we still enjoy playing it, but it's definitely 10 years dated, especially with Adam's art. I mean, the difference between Adam's art and the core game of the original edition versus the Oblivion art, and then with all the art that he's done for the RPG, it was really time to update everything about it.
So that was essentially the full process, because I mean, I've got the big box set in the other room, and that's been built up over time from the start all the way up to Oblivion area, where it's like, okay, I need half a day to play this, but it's going to be epic fun when it does.
Right.
But for me, yeah, Sentinels is one of those ones where, I already love Marvel and DC, so but you kind of like, right, well, here's a game with that license, and then it's like, okay, but now we got a game with its own universe, different superheroes, even though you can, every time I'm explaining the game, I can easily say, right now, and you're a Captain America fan, and you're right, well, there's Legacy for you. It's like, you can give them, you can always tell one character is kind of parodying a Marvel or DC superhero. It's like, oh, you're a Batman fan, right? Here's Rafe, it gets people in it quite a lot. So with this Definitive Edition, I did not see it coming, I got to admit. So there's not a huge amount of, shall we say, direct questions. I think this is more of a casual chat than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Mainly because I don't do interviews that often.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you've already sort of briefly explained that, all right, it was time for an update. Was there any other reason behind it?
Well, so it originally started with the idea that, I mean, it's an evergreen title for us. We've been selling it since 2011, and we're still selling it quite quickly. Like every time we do a new print run of Sentinels, it goes out the door and we're back to the factory to print another. We're like, well, we're thrilled to have this product that has been selling for a decade. That, I mean, that's the dream. But at the same time, it's like, man, you can really tell that we made it a decade ago. And so the original plan that Adam and I, Paul is our CEO, and Adam is the artist who's done all the art for Sentinels, and I am the writer and designer of Sentinels. And Paul and Adam and I, a couple of years ago, I think it was late 2018. We're like, you know what we should do? 10th year, the 10th anniversary is coming up. It'll be Gen Con of 2021 will be the 10th anniversary. For that, we should re-release the game with just like clean up all of the things about it, do all the art over again, because Adam hates the art, and we've got a fantastic team of graphic designers and stuff at the company now, whereas before it was just the three of us, and like I did the graphic design and layout, and that was a poor choice, but it was the choice we had. And so we're like, okay, well, we'll just like let's clean everything else up about it and make it the way it could look. And we're like, yeah, that's a good plan. And then in early to mid 2020, we started in on that process. And the first one was like, okay, let's just go to the Legacies deck and start looking through Legacies deck and talk about how each card could get updated. And as we did that, we're like, oh man, we should also really take into consideration the 80-ish years of comic book history that we have to draw on now, and not just update the arts to be better, but also update them to be of the era. Because we know certain arts are like, oh, this is of this character, which means it's from the story from 1973, which means that it should really be an early 70s art style. And the more we went down that rabbit hole, the more we were like, okay, we could really rework these decks to be the best like storytelling lens for the characters. And in that process, we had attended rules wise to only like have minor fixes for typos, really not really typos anymore at this point with the printings, but there's some things where like, this card had to be rephrased for the video game version because the video game engine couldn't handle it
Yeah.
the way it was phrased before. And so we're like, we could just like go through and take any of the cards that got rephrased for that and fix them up and all that, but we'll just make it all go together. And in that process, so really, it was just kind of that the game told us that we were like, okay, we're going to do this little thing. And every step we went, the game's like, well, yeah, but what if you went even further and made it even better? And some people are like, so why this is not just like a completely new game with the Sentinels license? It's like, oh, no, don't worry. We've got lots of completely new games with the Sentinels license ideas. We just put out the RPG. Arcane Wonders just kickstarted their game Freedom 5 that we worked with them on.
Yeah.
That is a Richard Launius designed thing. And so there's the Sentinels IP will continue to do things. But with Sentinels the Multiverse still being the single most popular thing out of the Sentinels IP, we wanted the Sentinels the Multiverse to be the best it could look. And then when we were looking into the looks, like, oh, it could also feel better. And one of the things that really I felt worried about, I was like, are we sure this is the right call? And in the very soon in the process, we have a core of playtesters that have playtested lots of things for us and been with us for years. Some of them have been playtesting with us since as like far back as 2010, and some of them have started more recently than that. But it's a whole scale. And in that process, a bunch of the playtesters, most of the playtesters are like, we don't like this at all. We don't want it. We love Sentinels because, unsurprisingly, our playtesters are the people that are the most into our stuff. They're like, no, we love Sentinels as it is. Why would we ever want to change anything? And watching them fairly quickly come around to, nope, you're right, this is just better and we like it more, was really like, oh, okay, good. That makes me feel like we're doing something right here. That the people who are most resistant to this, they're like, all right, we're willing to give it a shot because if you're going to have it, you might as well have it play tested. But I don't see myself ever playing this over my original edition. I'll play test it for, oh, okay. And to the point that as soon as we stopped play testing for the core game, we're like, okay, that's good. We don't need any more play testing on that. They're like, okay, but can we have what is essentially the final play testing files so that we can continue playing them for fun? Because at this point, we can't go back to the original Sentinels. And I was like, all right. Good. That's what I want to hear.
That's a good one because that's always been a worry with a few people that I've spoken to on this, where like those playtesters are probably similar to me. They've gone from start, finish, all the expansions, big collector set, even the Cauldron stuff, they've got like the whole lot together.
Yeah.
And then it's like saying, right, okay, reset, go again. Naturally, that's going to get resistance from some people.
And the nice thing is that we're not breaking into anybody's homes and throwing their collections away. We looked into what the logistics of that would be, and it's just too challenging. It's too much to do. And so we're not going to go hunting anybody down and saying, no, you must throw away your old content. There's people who have said, I've loved playing Sentinels for 8 years now, and how dare you make me stop? It's like, hold up. Like, we're not. You can ignore this Kickstarter, ignore the words definitive edition, and just keep playing and never have had your enjoyment lessened. But like I mentioned, we're still selling the game quite briskly. Not anymore. We stopped printing the core game and other things because of definitive edition. But up until end of last year, we were still selling things quite briskly. And that means that there's new people coming to the world of Sentinel Comics. And those new people are getting a game that is good. It's good. I like that game, but it can be better. And so I want to make sure that especially the new people, anybody who's like, no, this is the game and I like it the way it is, congratulations, you have it all already. But yeah, I keep looking over here when talking about it because last night in the mail, we got this, which is the game. This is it. This is definitive edition. It's the pre-production copy. And so like we have all of the things, and it's been so difficult today while I've been doing things to not just be constantly like,
all my stuff.
So, yeah, but it looks great. So
it'd be good to get some new people in because that's always been something where I've like taught the game. I've had to take over a bit on the admin bookkeeping side. So obviously stuff like that could be streamlined is always a good thing because then that will bring in the new players. And I mean, even if I sort of jump on this bandwagon and say, well, I got a copy I can teach people and a copy I've already got, it's like, well, fine. That's not like I'm getting rid of that big box in the other room. No,
exactly. It
makes up most of the top of that calyx and it will stay there.
Yeah, no, I have the big collector's case full of things myself, and people are saying, oh, so you're just never going to play that again? I'm like, oh no, I'm sure I'll play it again, and beyond that, I'm never going to get rid of it. Like, for me at least, it's an incredibly important part of the history of what is most likely my life's work. I would be surprised if I ever make anything more enduring than this, which is somewhat depressing as a creator, but hey, I'm thrilled that I've gotten to make something that is this enduring. So we'll see.
Yeah, it's defined my top 10 list for like the last God knows how many years. So I kind of got to stick around with it. And also, as I said, it's got, because presumably, well, unless you've got plans, you're not going to factor in like the fan made stuff that's gone through. So people have made fan made stuff, which is in my lot over there, as well as all the official stuff.
Right.
So if the fan made stuff doesn't come to definitive edition and it's like, well, I've got it in that edition, fine, I can use it in whichever one it has.
Yeah, we're not going to be updating fan made stuff because like that's beyond our purview. But
yeah,
we are releasing a PDF. It's just like a quick 2-page thing that just says, okay, if you want to play non-definitive edition alongside definitive edition, because like if you're like, oh, I really want to play Expatriate, well, give us a minute. She's coming soon. Don't worry about that. But if you're like, oh, I really want to play something from the Cauldron or something like that, great. Here's this guide of like this, treat this like this happens here, this is what this means, and understand, no, it's not a perfect thing. There's going to be some situations in which things get a little bit wibbly, but overall it should solve for 90+% of things. And so at least there is that ability. And I imagine that there will be, I've already heard some people who have been like, I've made a bunch of fan content and I'm not going to update any of it for definitive edition. And then they saw, like last week we did a live stream playthrough of definitive edition, and they're like, well, nope, never mind, I'm updating it right now. It's like, okay.
Yeah,
like, I mean, wait till it comes out, like at least.
That's the thing. If some people want to, they can. But I mean, it's unrealistic to accept that, oh, right, all this content that we didn't even have anything to do with. I mean, even because it's all right saying, well, it's technically content for the game. Yeah, but it's fan made. There's a difference between play tested official content and something that somebody just came up with on the fly. Because, as much as the Cauldron stuff is fun to use, balance wise, it's a little up and down in various areas. But then that's normal. You're basically playing a promo. So
yeah, well, and that's the thing is I got my start in game design with designing content for other people's games and realizing just how much you're like, aha, here's this thing, and it works, and oh no, and like that happens, and I'm thrilled that people make fan content for Sentinels. That's one of the two biggest things that make me excited about stuff that fans do is people making fan content and cosplay. Oh my gosh, at conventions, seeing people dressed up as my characters is like, wow, like that's the really made it moment. What was it? I think it was Gen Con 2013. We had cosplayers at our very first Gen Con even, but by Gen Con 2013 or 14, there was this crowd of like 60 people all in immaculate costumes, and it was like, okay, all right, okay.
Nice.
But as much as I love that stuff exists, I have never like read or interacted or played with any of the fan content, and I do that on purpose because I'm always creating and writing new things, and I don't want ever I don't want to get to the point of like, right, the like I'm making something and somebody's like, oh, that's a whole like this fan made thing, and if I'm like, that's great, that's fine, but I've never seen it, that's fine. But if I've seen it and played it, then it's like automatically gonna worm that space into my brain. So I'm just like, you know what? No. I want people to make that stuff. I'm not going to engage with it, but I'm going to encourage it all day. So
yeah. That's great. So with that bigger box there, I can already tell, and I know it's got like 12 heroes in it, 6 villains, 6 heroes. So presumably it's going to have the same 844 that came in the original base set. So who's new? Well, saying that.
So the original core game,
the
original core game was 10 heroes, 4 villains, and 4 environments. And yes,
10.
the 4 heroes and 4 villains and 4 environments that were in the core set are in this set here. So you've got Citizen Dawn, Grand Warlord Voss, Omnitron, and did I say Citizen Dawn? I did.
Yeah, Citizen
Baron
Dawn.
Blade. I didn't say Baron Blade.
Oh, so the original. You gotta have him.
I was like, well, sure, not him. He's right here on the cover of this box. Yeah, and Baron Blade. The 2 that are added are Akash Buddha and Matriarch. And Matriarch is added because she's really a Freedom 5 villain. She's the nemesis of Tachyon, and her stories, they happen in Rook City, but they are against the Freedom 5. Whereas Akash Buddha is the villain of Argent Adept and is really the villain of the Prime Wardens. And so I'll put a pin in that and come back to that in a minute. In terms of environments, we've got the standard. You got Megalopolis, Insula Primalis, Ruins of Atlantis, Wagner Mars Base, and then we're also adding Freedom Tower because it's the home of the Freedom 5, and Magmaria because it is a place that they end up a lot. Great. Right. So the heroes, we've got Freedom 5 plus their intern Unity. So the hero, so right off the bat, that's a hero that wasn't in the core game before. She was a little mini expansion on the side. Now she's part of the core game. Additionally, we have another hero team, which is the Prime Wardens, which actually adds a bunch of stuff that wasn't in the core game because Argent Adept's on that team. Hako was there before, Tempest was there before, Fnatic was there before, but Captain Cosmic wasn't. So both Argent Adept and Captain Cosmic are getting added to the core game. And with those 5, we're also adding their frequent ally, Ra. And Ra was in the core game before. But this means with our Freedom 5 plus Unity and Prime Wardens plus Ra, that's our 12 heroes, which means we're missing the Visionary. The Visionary was in the core game before, and she's not in the core game anymore. So
but I presume she'll just appear later. I mean, it's
maybe.
If you go, I think it would be weird otherwise. But yeah,
it would be weird otherwise.
You're trying to keep it for Madden. That's fine. Yeah, you've got like the Freedom 5, you got the Prime Warden 5, and then whatever other team ups can be made from the others.
Exactly. Yeah, each of the and that's the thing is we have the plans for this product line is 6 boxes. No mini expansions, no other things. It's just 6 main boxes, and those 6 main boxes each have a bunch of heroes, a bunch of villains, a bunch of environments, and a bunch of other things as well that give you different ways of playing the game. And that's the whole definitive edition plan at this point.
That's not working that. So I mean, with this lineup, clearly, as we say, we're going for like the new folk who've never seen Sentinels before. So in terms of like going from like, right, okay, we're used to Sentinels, we've played this for a long time, now here's the new one. So other than artwork and obviously what's in the core box, what else has specifically changed?
Sure. So there's some minor things that have changed, like a lot of it's positional, like the way that we've talked about hero turns before is hero turns are play, power, draw. Well, that's not true. It's really do all your start of turn things, then play, power, draw, then do all your end of turn things. And so we've just kind of codified that in a way that makes it really clear by saying that hero turns are broken into phases where you have your start phase, your play phase, your power phase, your draw phase, and then your end phase. And where did I put it? Yeah. And so just kind of like building that out and making that clear, which I'm showing you from this rule book, the way that we've done this. And the reason that I am showing this here is these are on cards as well now. So where there's things before that would say at the start of your turn, do blah, it instead says start phase, do this stuff. Anything that happens in any other phases, say the phase. So you can really quickly, just from across the table, see in somebody's cards what exactly is happening in regards to that.
Yeah, there's a couple on my screen I've got on the side where you can see like, I mean, obviously for Zoom, feel free to show, but like on the side I can see like start phase, big bold green text, that instantly says, all right, okay, that's a start phase thing I need to do. Because previously, in order to deal with it on an easy side, it's like, right, okay, I got to remember what order they came out in. So let's start left to right, go through, inspect every card, which I'm used to because I've played it to death. But
exactly. It just makes it easier to learn, because that's the thing is that this isn't a different game than before, but we're trying to take the things that people who've played this game a lot and it becomes second nature to them. Let's make that so it's actually just easier to get into it. One of the ways that I had originally attempted to solve for that kind of thing in the game was by making every piece of information in the game, with the exception of like the structure of the game itself, on cards. And I was like, this way, anytime you're reading anything, you're like, well, how does this work? The full text is on the card. And as much as I like that, it meant that cards got really wordy.
Yeah.
Because there would be a thing that says, okay, search your deck for a particular type of card. Take that card and put it in your hand. Then shuffle your deck or something like that. And there's a bunch of text. Whereas instead, that entire bit of text that I just said is replaced in this game by the word collect. We've added some new terms. Collect, discover, salvage, and summon are the big ones. And so collect is search your deck for a card, put that card in your hand, shuffle your deck. And so instead of having to say all this word, we just say, oh, collect one item card or collect one ongoing card. So that way you can just go, oh, I'll go look at an ongoing card, get it here. Salvage is the same thing for your trash. Go through your trash, put it into your hand. And then summon is go through your deck and trash, both. Get the thing that you're being referred, like summon 4 ongoing cards. Okay, great. Go find 4 ongoing cards and put them into play. So someone puts them directly into play. And then discover is the kind of random one. Discover is reveal cards from the top of the deck until you get to the thing. So if it's discover 2 one shots, that'd be random times. But yeah, discover 2 one shots. You reveal cards at the top of your deck until you get a one shot. Play it. Here's another one shot. Play it. Any cards that you've revealed, shuffle them back into the deck. So if the top 2 cards of the deck, so like if Baron Blade has a Discover 1 device and the top card of his deck is a device, he would reveal it, play it, and not shuffle his deck because he didn't reveal any non-played cards. And so I can have all these like corner cases that I explain of exactly how Discover works, and then condense it down to Discover. Have the back of the rulebook have all that information onto it, and that means that like, yeah, you need to learn some terms, but people end up doing that. Like you just said, I played the game a bunch, so I do this automatically. You'll learn that stuff over time anyway. And the thing that we noticed was that the first time we introduced it, was like, okay, hold on. I have to look at the term, look at the rule book. Now I know the term. But after you've done that 2-3 times, you know it. And it makes the game a lot more streamlined. And anybody who's brand new, the rule book's right there. It's got the information on the back. So yeah, the back of the rule book has like short definitions of all the important terms. And then they're in the middle of the rule book, there's like this bigger glossary that's like fully explained out everything. It also means that we can kind of normalize a bunch of ways of doing things. So before we might have something that could get as overwrought as like reveal the top 5 cards of your deck, take any ongoing cards revealed that way and set them aside. Then shuffle all the other reveal cards back in the deck. Then of the ongoing cards revealed, put 1 into play, 1 in your hand, and 1 in your trash. And like, great, cool, fine. That's too much. We need to say essentially you have like 4 or 5 ways of interacting with cards out of your deck, and that way, once you've played a few decks, you're like, right, I know how these things work. I understand how these things are. Just kind of like normalizing things so that the minutia of getting cards out of your deck and putting cards into play stops being the thing that you spend so much time doing, and you spend more time figuring out strategy, figuring out what your options are, conferring with your teammates instead of like, hold on, I got to do this nonsense. It's like, no. I get my cards into play, and then we fight the villain. So,
that's good with that. With the balancing aspect, because in the first time Sentinels came out, it was just 2, 3, 4 player, whatever. And then as the enhanced one came out, you had the H symbol for heroes.
Yeah.
And what tended to get given as feedback was that even though that balanced out certain aspects of it, you essentially went, okay, if you were playing balanced game, you went 4 player. If you wanted an easier time, you played 5. And if you wanted a harder time, you played 3. I noticed that H symbol is still in the game itself, but has anything been tweaked to that?
Yeah, so the H symbol is absolutely still the thing that is a numeral that means the number of players. Okay, great. Or rather, the number of heroes. And so that is certainly a useful thing that we still use a lot. But a lot of testing has gone into making sure that the mechanics still feels right for across a number of players, and certain villains are slightly easier, harder. I don't feel like there's as much swing as there used to be in terms of difficulty between 3 to 5. There's going to be certain differences just because you have different synergies with different groups of heroes. Some villains are going to be easier with 3 particular heroes than they would be against 5 other particular heroes. But that is all the minutia of a cooperative game where everybody at the table is working together. But yeah, there's been a lot of balance put towards that, especially with the idea of like looking at how many, because another thing that balances pretty nicely is something that hits all targets, because all targets is different all hero targets is different in a 3-player game than it is in a 5-player game. But you also have to be careful with that with things like Unity and Captain Cosmic.
Yeah.
Uh-oh, did I lose you?
I'm still here. Just double. Yeah. Sometimes it likes to glitch every now and again. It keeps claiming that my internet is unstable, which is kind of weird. Although I have to admit, it's usually flawless, but lately it has been sort of being a little bit temperamental. But it should be fine. Fair enough.
That's frustrating.
Right. So with the extra rules and that, fine. I remember like they had the difficulty chart at the back with like particular heroes and stuff like that. Presumably that's going to remain.
Yes, although it's a bit different now. So the heroes complexity chart is on a scale of 1 to 10 now, because we're saying a scale of 1 to 3 doesn't give you much granularity. It's like, well, what does that even mean? And so in the core game, we've got Argent Adept coming in at a 10, unsurprisingly. Absolute Zero is only an 8, which Absolute Zero is considered to be one of the more complicated ones. And he still is fairly complicated, but he's a bit less terrible now than he used to be. And
it was always quite a hard one out of the box. It's like, right, we're going to play our first game. Are you sure you want to be Absolute Zero for your first game?
So many people are like, he looks so cool. I want to play Absolute Zero. It's like, yeah, he's very cool.
If you can make him work, yeah.
be willing to murder yourself. One of the we've got various quality of life upgrades that have happened as part of this too. That where Absolute Zero's null point calibration unit is still the card that says whenever Absolute Zero would be dealt cold damage, he regains that much HP instead. But it has an important note that when this card is played, you may play a card. And so both of his key cards, null point calibration unit and isothermic transducer, when you play them, you immediately can play another card. And so he can get built up pretty quickly and also recover from being destroyed pretty quickly. Bunker has changed quite a lot. His mode cards are a lot more versatile and also a lot more dynamic. They come in, they do a thing, you're in that mode, and then they destroy themselves after one round. And so I would say the two characters that changed the most are Bunker and Tempest, and the two characters that changed the least are, I don't know that I have a two characters. Maybe Captain Cosmic. No, Rod changed a bunch. And Tachyon.
Cosmic. Tachyon and Wraith seemed pretty balanced when I remember.
Tachyon stayed mostly the same. I'm very happy with Tachyon's design from day one. She stayed mostly the same. We cleaned up a few things here and there, made a couple things that were more interesting. We added a whole new mechanic called reactions. So she got a reaction card. Reactions are things that when you would be dealt damage, you can do this thing. And so some of its reactions like, oh, I'm going to be dealt damage. I'm going to do a thing and prevent some damage. Okay, great. But Tachyon has a thing that when she's dealt damage, she can either draw a card or play a card, but if she plays a card, it then blows up the reaction. So it's like, great, I was hit, I'll draw a card. I was hit, I'll draw a card. I was hit, I'll draw a card. I'm going to be hit real hard. I'll play a card that somehow negates that hit, and it uses up my reaction, and my reaction is now gone. But until then, it gives you a lot of resources. And then the Wraith has a reaction. I was just looking at it the other day. Where did it go? The Wraith has the card Combat Prowess became a reaction that when she would be dealt damage, she reduces that damage by 2. And if that, as a result, is that even focusing on that? It probably isn't.
Not so much on the text, but
yeah, unfortunately. If I hide my face, whatever. Anyways, -2 damage would be dealt.
Text, but yeah.
Right. But then as a result, if you don't take damage, if you reduce the damage and get rid of it entirely, so if you would be dealt 1 or 2 damage and reduce it to 0, you can then play a card. So that allows her to change some combos outside of her own turn. Anyway, everybody's just gotten, like I said, in ranges from small quality of life upgrades to notable mechanical overhauls like Bunker's mode system or his ordnance cards, which are his guns. It's a new thing there. And Haka's his Haka of things cards are all quite different now than they used to be as well.
Yeah, so there's, even for some of us who have played the game to death in that, there's still some experience differences to have with just going, all right, well, I played Tachyon to death. I think she probably was one of the ones I used the most out of the base set, and then said it right, and I'll take the new Tachyon. I was like, oh, things have changed.
Right. Additionally, there's all the hero character cards for all are fairly recognizable. Some of them are a little bit different because the deck itself has changed, so it needed to be updated for that regard. But there's a whole bunch of new variants that have never been seen before. The first appearance variants, and these are all the variants that are literally the first appearance of that character. And so the cover, the art for it is the comic book cover from the first time that character ever showed up in the pages of Sentinel Comics. And so these variant cards are a bunch of really cool comic covers, and they have new mechanics and new things. And so nothing else is.
And variants were always one of the best things, actually, just to sort of go, right, okay, I've got this, I've got Legacy, but here's, do I want to use Legacy this, or World War II Legacy, or Supergirl Legacy? Right. It made Oblivion a lot of fun.
Yeah, those were an important part of that fight. You needed those.
But it was just sort of great that I've got these characters, right? They're getting killed off, but I've killed off Legacy. Fine. In comes the variant. In comes another variant. It's both thematic, but also just it worked quite well for the situation in the last game I played.
You needed a big roster to take on Oblivion. Yeah. And so there is the variants. There's variants that come in the box, but beyond that, there's also that's alternate ways of hero play. So we've had in the past some villain character card variants, and those have been okay. The stories are all, in my opinion, quite good, but the mechanics were fine. So you still have the regular villain character cards and the stuff that they do, but there's also now 2 new types of ways to play villains, which is events. And so let me pull, where are the events that I'm looking for? There they are. So for Baron Blade's event, so the event cards give you a bit of story about like what happened in this event in the pages of Sentinel Comics. It tells you that that the name of the event is Moonfall, and it happened in April of 1968. And the reason it has this date here in the corner is that you can then take all of your event cards and play them as a campaign in chronological order. And each set that comes out will add more event cards. And the event cards, like I said, tells you the story, shows you the comic book cover that kicked off the event. It gives you a collection limit. I'll talk about that in a second. And it tells you what villain you're playing against for that event and what the mechanical rule change is here. So for the Baron Blade event, it's a minor thing. It's just whenever Baron Blade would be dealt damage, you reveal the top card of the deck. And if it's a minion card, you play it and redirect the damage to that minion card. Otherwise, bury the card. So while you're playing in this event, the ability My Life for Mordengrad is in play, which is if somebody tries to hurt Baron Blade, a minion tries to go, no, me instead. So which makes sense. So like it's a slight mechanical change, but it does make it doesn't add a level of interest that wasn't necessarily there on its own. When you beat an event, you flip the card over and it tells you the story of how that event went. It shows you a list of all the comic books that are in that event, and it gives you a cover from like the conclusion of that event. Like some of the events
almost like you want to go like it's like, well done, you've played this game. Now if you're interested in reading the backstory, here's where you go to find it.
Right. Well, and like some events, like the Invasion of Earth event from Voss has again, it's not going to focus on it, but you can at least see, well, it might focus a little bit. The list of comic books that are in this event is massive. Like a ton of comic books happen in that event. Whereas the Moonfall event is really just Moonfall 1 through 6 and then Freedom 5, 23, and 24. Anyway, but the important mechanical part of this is besides, you got your story, you got your thing, but then over here, there's this thing called the collection. And now that you've beat this event, you have this card, you put it to the side, it's in your collection. And when you play other events, as I mentioned, each event on the cover on the front has a collection limit. So this one has collection limit 1, which means that you can take 1 collection card into the play. So if you've beat dozens of collections over the dozens of events over the course of playing Sentinels: The Multiverse Definitive Edition, and you have tons and tons of collections, great. You're facing this collection, you can have 3 collection cards. You have to pick your 3 collection cards that you want and bring them into that thing. And the collections are just 2 effects that says once per turn, or rather once per game. This can be used where once per game you go, you know what, I'm going to activate one of these 2 rewards and it'll do the thing on the thing, and you can use it, and then it's used up and it goes away for the rest of that game. And they give you little bonuses that are useful things that you can have, which is important because as you're playing through the collections, your events rather, and getting your collections, you will then occasionally find critical events. And the critical events look similar. They've got your story, they've got your comic book cover, they have an event, a collection limit, but they don't have any like tells you who's on the front, tells you who you're playing against, because you flip it over and it's a character card. It's a villain character card. And during your setup, it tells you how to set it up and what decks you're with. Each of the critical events in the core game, there's a critical event for Grand Warlord Voss. There's a critical event for Baron Blade. There's one for each of the 6 villains. The core game comes with 12 events. 6 events for the 6 regular villains, and then 6 critical events for the 6 villains. But we definitely have plans for future events that are like, okay, take this environment deck and takes this one thing out of it, and then take this villain. Like we have all sorts of cool building blocks we can do here for different events. And you play against this villain, and they don't give you any rewards for beating them. They're just a part of the campaign, but you have accumulated the rewards up to this point to beat these much scarier threats. And so, like, unsurprisingly, Cosmic Omnitron and Mad Bomber Blade are the 2 critical events for those 2 characters. But who's the critical event for Akash Buddha or the Matriarch? Well, only time will tell.
So do we need a harder Matriarch?
So Matriarch, I would say, is slightly easier than she used to be. Not hugely, but slightly easier than she used to be. Just kind of tuned in a bit, where the difficulty of Matriarch frequently before was frustration, and I wanted to eliminate that. But the Matriarch event is less, the Matriarch critical event is less about here's a more challenging one, and more about here's a very different story told with that same deck. So
so it's in a sense campaign play, but kind of flexible, I guess.
Yeah, right. And so you can do it in whatever order. And the idea is, because we were like, man, for us to do a campaign, we kind of have to wait until we put out all of the content for us to actually have a campaign that involves everything. It was like, I don't know, if we put out the events as these boxes come out, by the time all the content is out, then you can put together an entire campaign. But as the stuff's coming out, you're not gated. You don't have to wait. So.
Yeah, because obviously you've got heroes meeting up with each other. It's not like they just conveniently stayed away from each other for various sections of the comics and that.
Right. Yeah,
So it's
of
got to
course.
refer back to it. All right. So it's obviously like cards and that have changed, mechanics have changed. Are tokens or the like pieces themselves changing to any extent? Because I think previously you had like the kind of flash banners for +1 damage or different types of damage, as well as the hit points, and there was quite a lot of hit point tracking.
Right. So hit point tracking is certainly reduced to from where it used to be. We've tried to zero in on that a bit.
Talk to FFG
First
and get some
off,
of their dials.
some of these dials.
Yeah.
These dials we've made for Sentinels the Multiverse, and these are your hero dials. And so for your hero hit points, you can turn
Yeah.
it to yep. So we have hero hit point trackers and the big old villain hit point tracker. When I was
Ooh.
talking to my graphic design people, and I was like, okay, and they're like, how many hit points can villains have? I'm like, well, in the core game, there's a Kosh Buddha, and she has 200 hit points. And they're like, okay, so the
Yeah, pretty big
highest
one.
that my hit point tracker for villains is allowed to go up to is 209 hit points. I'm not allowed to have a villain with more than 209 hit points. And I said, oh, we'll see. We'll see. They have 200 on one side. They flip over. They have another 200. Now they have 400 hit points. Anyway,
just one hero, one villain to come out in the long run or so with 209, exactly 209.
Exactly 209. Yeah. The other thing they told me is that for my heroes, I couldn't have a hero that had more than 99 hit points. And I said, you know what? I'm not worried about that one. That one seems pretty unlikely.
So overpowered.
Right. But it still does come with a small collection of hit point tokens for minions and environment targets and things like that. But for the villain and for the heroes, you're going to use the spinners, and they work quite nicely. And then in terms of +1s and -1s, the +1s and -1s, the usage of those in the decks has been streamlined a good deal, so where it's not quite as fiddly to keep track of all those things. But for the times that you do have like a +1 to damage or a -1 to damage taken, you have these tokens, and they are great because you're like, all right, well, I've got a +1 damage that I deal +1 damage. Oh, somebody else is giving me another +1 damage. Okay, there we go. And and so you can stack those up, and the same thing with the -1s. So there's 4 flavors. There's +1 to damage dealt, +1 to damage taken, -1 to damage dealt, -1 to damage taken, and each of them has their own design. That's the +1 to damage dealt. So the green and the blue are good. I deal more damage, I take less damage, and then there's 2 different red ones that are like a red and an orange one, which is I deal less damage, I take more damage. So and so the way that those nest like that makes it very easy to see what's going on from across the table, and we use them more sparingly now. So yep. And then we have a few other tokens, not quite the vast array of tokens we had before. We've knocked it down to just dropped a token. Yeah. We knocked it down to just 3 other types of tokens. Yes. A cannot deal damage token, because that's an effect that comes up every so often, and cannot deal damage looks like this. And if you're like, wait a minute, I don't remember what that means, don't worry, the back of the token says this target cannot deal damage. The immune to damage token, which looks like this. Wait a minute, what does that mean? It means this target is immune to damage. And then a simple reminder token, which is your nemesis token, and you put that next to your character card, and next to the character card of anything else that is a nemesis to remind yourself. So
that's enough. With the storage, so presumably that box will hold everything in place for now. So I would guess that each box will be like separately store its own things, or that, because obviously you can't do a big box from the ground up, because that's just right. That doesn't work.
And we have no intention to release another collector's case like we did before. Those were not. Those were financially terrible. We lost money on those, and I did not mind. I don't mind having ever done so, but we're not doing that again. It wasn't worth it. In order to make those sturdy enough to do what we wanted to, they had to be so expensive. And we're like, okay, so be it. I'm glad we made them. We'll never make them again. So if you've got one, enjoy it. Hang on to it. That's it.
I'll get rid of it. But I remember like the diaries for like the whole Kickstarter thing or something. It's like, it sounds like a logistical nightmare. So.
Yep. But anyway, so each box, and like this box here, the insert is incorrect in it. It's one of the things that we have a pre-production copy for, because right now there's this channel for cards, and then this box comes inside the box, and it's for keeping your tokens and everything sorted. And it goes in here with these thumb cutouts, and there's a space.
Nice.
But this is wrong. There's going to be a channel. This is going to be much thinner. It's going to be much more like the ones inside the regular Sentinels boxes. And so there'll be a channel for cards here, like there is, but there'll also be a channel for cards here. And then this will be shaped differently and slightly deeper with more space on either side of it for more things. So the box footprint is correct, but the amount of space in it is going to be much more specific. But we had to go back and forth with the printer to make that happen, and we're doing that, and it's going well. So,
and presumably room for sleeves, because I know I'll get asked that.
Yep. Yeah, if you're not sleeving your cards in like the super mega thick things, then they should all fit sleeved in here. In fact, there's a sort of thickness of sleeve that we think works perfectly, and that thickness of sleeve is one that we are offering, because one of the things we're doing as part of this definitive edition Kickstarter is getting into the wild world of making card sleeves. This upcoming Kickstarter, it launches a week from today, is going to have 2 pledge levels. One pledge level is you get the game. The other pledge level is you get the game and enough sleeves to sleeve every card in the game. And those are the only 2 pledge levels. There's no stretch goals. There's no other things. It's just very straightforward. But that we're working with a factory that makes really nice, really high quality sleeves. And people for a long time have asked us, like, oh, we want Sentinel sleeves that have like different characters on the backs. And we're like, no, the backs of our cards are really specific. You need to see both sides of the cards. But
well, the cards already have those backs. That's the thing.
Exactly. Well, and even more so now, because like the backs of the previous Sentinels cards had like, they were like thematic and in interesting ways, but the backs of the hero cards now from Sentinels tell the story of the character, where you're like, oh, here's the things that happened in the history of this character. So for Fanatic's card, the color of it matches with her color. Like for whose card is this? Yeah, for Tempest's card, we have this color card, and it shows things that have happened in their backstory, with the idea being that your tableau in front of you when you're playing the game is you have your character card that shows the iconic version of your character. Beneath that, you have your deck stack, and your deck back is showing like some of the backstory of that character. And then any cards in play are things you're doing this story. And so it even more creates that comic book feeling at the table.
Yeah, because all the characters had to feel unique at the end of the day, and they still had the backs. They had the logo. I mean, didn't necessarily have the screenshots last time, but it still had the fancy logo. So not to mention cost. I mean, heroes and villains with specific backs. Should be that fun. I mean, I get most of my sleeves from Sleeve Kings now. I'm pretty certain I can find enough sleeves to go on Sentinels and that thing. Although, well, I mean, if you're getting a factory to make these sleeves, obviously for this definitive set, right, okay, you're perfectly catered for. But when we come to do expansion content in the future, are people going to be able to acquire these sleeves at a later date?
Yes, because we're making these sleeves not just for this Kickstarter. We're using this Kickstarter to launch our line of sleeves, but then we're just going to carry sleeves for all of our products, both on our web store and then, of course, stores can order them from us. And we're getting into sleeves just because we get so many questions about sleeves that we're like, well, let's just do them right in the way that we want people, because people are like, should I buy this sleeve from this company or this sleeve from this company? And I'm like, I can't be responsible for the quality control of any other companies. I think some companies do a really good job at sleeves, and I think others don't. And so I was like, fine, we'll do the ones. So we're putting out 5 different sizes of sleeves. Sleeves that fit the regular cards from Sentinels to Multiverse, sleeves that fit the hero cards, because the hero character cards are slightly different size now. So there's three sizes of cards in this game: regular character cards, hero character cards, villain character cards, and then the other 2 sizes of cards that we're making sleeves for is square cards, like from Compounded. There's also square cards in this game, but you don't need to sleeve them. They're the divider cards. The divider cards for each character shows the character's name, their portrait, and also a complete deck list of every card in their deck. So if you're like, wait, what's in this character's deck? Just look at the divider card. And then the others. Yeah, and then the other size of sleeve that we're making is the small sleeves that are the size of the Invader cards in Spirit Island, because that's another game that we make that has another size of cards. And so we're like, okay, those are the 5 sizes and shapes of cards that we will make, and we'll have sleeves for all of them. So
yeah, so okay, it's very other ones.
Yeah. The other thing that's cool that we haven't talked about is that environments mechanically have changed a lot, not in a radical way, but in a why was it wrong before? In the passive Sentinel comics, and this is a thing that we just all, by we I mean people that play Sentinels a lot, we just all accept that it's this way. But why is it this way? That environment decks just work different from all other decks. Like they don't have one shots, they don't have ongoings. Sometimes the environment itself is a source of damage for reasons that aren't explained by the game. Like it's just different. And so we're like, okay, no, let's fix that. Let's normalize environments. Let's make environment cards. There are environment one shots. They come out, they do what they say, they go away. We know how that works. That's not weird. Some environments are ongoing cards, and some environments are targets. But so yeah, we normalized the way that environments work, and as part of that, environment cards, talking about deck backs, have a very cool deck back in that they kind of look like a panoramic postcard of the place that you're going, and then the card itself is in that same orientation, and so you've got your art over here, your title, your keyword, all this stuff. But so it's very easy to tell because like looking at,
because the old ones, they look the same format, so each card looked like another card.
And from here, you can tell very quickly what a villain card is and what a hero card is. Hero cards have a blue border, and the villain cards have a red border. But also, like the villain card, the edges of the paper are torn, and the title bar is crooked. Like there's just little things. You see the tear here on the top. So like there's little things that tell you, oh, this is a hero card, this is a villain card, and this is an environment card. Part of the reason we did this also is for a cute reason, that there are, if you're looking at like a piece of paper, the orientation of that piece of paper is called portrait like this.
Yeah.
And it's called landscape like this. Environments are landscapes. So
that's halfway through that sentence. It's like, yep.
Like, oh boy, here he goes. He thinks he's so clever. I'm like, no, I'm just pleased with my little inside jokes. So yeah, just lots of little things that are quality of life upgrades that make the game for new players like, this feels good. But I believe strongly that this is going to be for dyed-in-the-wool players like ourselves, that it's not going to be like, I have to get all these new things. Like, oh, wow, a new way to enjoy Sentinels the Multiverse. I know for me, I've been playing it a ton. And when Daryl, so we have two main graphic designers who worked on this, Daryl Lauder and Ray Henderson. They're both amazing. And I'm just so lucky to have them. And when Daryl got the pre-production copy yesterday, he drove it over to my house. We're both vaccinated, and we sat at the table and just like, nope, we're gonna go through all this. We played a couple of games. We're like, this is so nice. So yeah,
that's all looking pretty good. So once obviously you're starting a week from now, when are you expecting that it's going to release properly, or when, well, shall we say fulfillment, if that's the right word?
Right. So they're doing the Kickstarter from March 30th through April 23rd. And our goal was to release the game at Gen Con 2021 because the game was originally released at Gen Con 2011. And we're like, great, let's do a release at Gen Con 2021. And we're like, yeah, but it's going to be a shame because I don't think anybody is going to or should go to Gen Con. And then they moved Gen Con from August to September. And the vaccine rollout in the United States got significantly better. Like the last couple months for the vaccine rollout has been surprising to me. I have been unsurprisingly disappointed by how the pandemic has been treated in the United States up until the last few months. And now I've been like pleasantly surprised. Speaking as a person who has been, I'm not in any way on the front lines, but I was part of a medical trial for the Moderna vaccine. When they started putting the vaccines around, I was one of the 30,000 people in the Moderna trial. And so I was injected full of experimental fluids in August of last year. That worked out pretty well.
And now your superhero name is? Yes.
I didn't get powers out of it. I'm so mad. Of course I was part of an experimental medical trial. How did I not get powers out of it? I'm incensed. But point being, I am feeling like medium hopes, not high hopes, but medium hopes about our actually being able to have a presence at Gen Con this year. And so releasing this game at Gen Con this year feels very positive. Regardless, we would like to have the fulfillment for that before that. So we've said, we're saying on the Kickstarter, the fulfillment is end of 2021 because you never know what happens. At this point, we know what happens with the production process. Like we're good on that. But we had a cargo container once on a boat get halfway across the ocean from China, hit a typhoon, and have to turn around and go back to China. And so we're like, well, that screwed our schedule. We had once a cargo container that was on a train going from the West Coast coming over to St. Louis, where we're located, and the train derailed and all the boxes fell off the train sideways. And we're like, I'm sorry, our fulfillment has been delayed. It does not matter how mad at us you are. We're more mad. I guarantee we're more upset.
It's like a train derailed. It's not like we camped and did it ourselves. It's
The train derailed and it was full of product that we needed to have at Gen Con. And this was a month before Gen Con, which is not enough time for wiggle room. And so we found a truck driver that was what is called a hotshot truck driver, which is a specific job title. Hotshot truck drivers aren't the long distance truck drivers that work regular truck driver shifts. Instead, they sit around waiting for somebody to have an emergency. And then they're allowed to break certain rules. Like most truck drivers can't drive more than a certain number of hours a day. Hotshot truck drivers sit around and so like, well, no, nobody else. And then when they're they can just drive straight through. So he leaves St. Louis, drives straight through to Colorado, picks up gets there. They take a crane and put the cargo container on the back of his truck, and then he like takes a quick break, drinks an energy drink, and drives all the way back to St. Louis. And so like 72 hours later, we have our container, and it cost us so much money. But
it's basically a doctor on call, isn't it? You've just got a truck driver on call.
But I was just like, man, hotshot truck driver is a super cool job title.
It's got to do hell for a social calendar, though.
Yeah, right. It's like,
notice I need to drive across the entire country.
I assume that they can refuse jobs. I assume that you don't want to, but if you're like, oh, I've got this scheduled, my best friend's wedding is coming up. No, I'm not going to take a job then. I assume. I don't think it's like, you must drive now. Okay.
Well, I'm going to guess that if they're bending the rules, they're going to be self-employed. They're going to make their own rules. Therefore, do they want to get paid? That's pretty
right.
much it.
And so, right. This question is like, oh, a job came up. I'm taking it.
Yeah, there was that. Now, is there anything else about the set that we haven't discussed that you're sort of keen to get out in the open?
We talked about events. We talked about variants. The core game comes with both a rule book, and a lore book, and the lore book has like both like backstory and gameplay information. It's kind of all the same stuff that was in the original Sentinels book, but there's more of it, and so it's broken into 2 books, and they're beautiful. Like this is actually not even the final version. I'll send you the final version of the. I'll do it right now before I forget of the rule book. Boop. Here is a Dropbox link to the final rulebook. Because like this rulebook is the 3rd revision rulebook, so it doesn't have stuff on the back, but the one I just sent you does. But yeah, I think that like material-wise, content-wise are all there. The only other thing is that we've got, like I said, 6 products planned out for this, 6 boxes. And as you cleverly noted, there's like, okay, the core game has 2 hero teams in it. Presumably other boxes will have other hero teams in them. That's certainly true. But there is everything that you've ever seen in Sentinels the Multiverse before is going to be in Definitive Edition over the course of these things, and more. There are more new things that are going to be added over the course of this, because part of it is when Adam and I started making this stuff, we in 2010 started telling these stories, and we knew everything there was to know about Sentinel Comics at that point because we made it up. So of course we knew everything there was to know about it. But we've spent the last 10 years doing mostly this with our time. Adam has been drawing mostly nonstop for 10 years. I've been writing and designing these things, and we've been jointly doing storytelling pretty heavily with this. And as a result, the 86 years of comic book history that these are based on have expanded a lot in that time. And so with that in mind, there are other important facets of the multiverse that didn't ever get to be showcased in Sentinels the Multiverse before that will be a part of it going forward.
So essentially, potentially more heroes, landscapes, stuff from the comics that wasn't in the original set. So there is something new to come.
Yes.
So sweet, more content. I'm gonna knock that.
Yeah.
Balancing tweaks and that, and say just looking for the rule book.
Oh sure.
Now it's got, as I say, it's got the keywords there. It's got enough drawings, fair amount of text, but then there's only so much. Oh, actually, saying that is the glossary sections. That's not a surprise.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. The 2 big text-heavy sections are the glossary area, and then there's a 2-page spread of frequently asked questions at the back that I hope people find useful, because they are genuinely the questions people are like, wait a minute, this and that, how does this work? It's like, okay, there you go.
Show his knees, turn sequence on the back, useful terms. So 6. Well, I mean, ally is pretty self-explanatory, and then you just got
you would say
6
so.
others, yeah.
But ally, the question that we always get is, wait, are you your own ally? Because in some games you are your own ally, and in some games you're not your own ally when it's being used as a mechanical term. And in Sentinels the Multiverse, you do not count as your own ally, which is important, because if something like somebody says, hey, each of your allies draws a card, that doesn't mean all heroes draw a card. It means that all heroes other than you draw a card.
I suppose it just comes from what games you played, because if I've heard that, it's like your allies draw a card. It's like, well, by definition, it's kind of like, well, if it wanted me to draw a card, it'd say I draw a card. But yeah,
Right.
I can see why
Right.
some people would
So they were like, you
probably
know what,
say
let's
that.
go ahead and put it on there. It's allies on the back of the book, especially because it wasn't a specific mechanical term that we used before, and so like we don't have play or draw defined on the back of the book because we assume you know those things. But the ones that are like, okay, these are new words, they're on the back, and then we have far more terms in the middle.
Yeah, we got notice in that. Brilliant. And so it's finally, for a cheeky sense, assuming that you've got any well, you must have some likeness for Marvel and DC. What are your favorite heroes out of those two franchises?
My favorite
DC,
Marvel hero.
For me, DC, it's the Flash.
Flash is great. Flash is a great hero.
I'm trying to think which one is favorite for Marvel, though. There's so many choices on that one. Marvel has just got far too many good ones.
Yeah, that's the trick. Is it for me, like DC, the big difference for me between DC and Marvel is that DC is good at big sweeping archetypal characters, where like Batman, Superman, and Flash are all the archetype, the most archetypal version of that sort of character. Whereas Marvel takes a character and you're like, oh, they're kind of like this, but wait, the levels of depth. I mean, like the fact that there's a character, one of the most popular characters is Wolverine, and his powers have nothing to do with being a Wolverine, but like it all works. Like there's a lot of cool stuff there.
Yeah, the sort of best definition that I've heard with this is, if you imagine that Marvel is about humans becoming heroes, DC, it's the reverse. It's about heroes becoming humans, because all the DC heroes, for the most part, are like almost godly characters. Your Wonder Woman's, your Superman's, and that, with a few exceptions. And it's more like, okay, we're kind of like the fish out of water. Let's try and be a bit more human. Whereas when you got things like Marvel, you're talking people like Hawkeye, Ant-Man, Black Widow, Captain America, and stuff, where it's like, yeah, you were just bog standard human before. Now you're doing this stuff.
Yeah, when I was a kid, I was way more into Marvel than DC. And when I was a kid, and I still am more into Marvel than DC. But when I was a kid, my favorite character vacillated between Angel / Archangel and Gambit. I loved X-Men stuff. X-Men still is my favorite like niche within the world of Marvel. Well, actually, have you read are you familiar with the Exiled series?
Sadly, most of my like Marvel and DC knowledge has either been movie or TV series.
Okay.
I haven't had the time to read comics per se, apart from just like checking up on lore. But I mean, Marvel for me, probably favorite one, ironically, even though I'm arachnophobic, it would be Spider-Man, just because I've liked that story, and I think I do remember growing up with the animated series as a kid for ages, and I used to watch that every week. So yeah, Spider-Man I think resonated.
Yeah, and this is the thing, is that Spider-Man is like this kind of like underdog, but also everyman character. Like if someone's like, can you imagine yourself as Captain America? It's like, no, Captain America is like Captain America. I think he's super cool. I can't imagine myself as him. I think Iron Man's cool. I can't imagine myself as him. I think Thor is cool. I think, so many of these characters are cool, but I can't imagine. But you can be like, what about Spider-Man? It's like, well, no, like if it happened to me, I could kind of imagine myself as Spider-Man. And it turns out that people tend to think of like Captain America and Iron Man and Wolverine and Superman and Batman as being the most popular superheroes. But those heroes that I just named, all of them combined are less popular than Spider-Man. Spider-Man is the most popular and famous superhero in the world by several orders of magnitude. So go figure. But for me, I think that my favorite DC hero is probably Plastic Man. There's some really fun stories that have been done with Plastic Man, and he's a very like, I'm a joke character that actually has more depth than his joke, which is a thing that I don't usually get out of DC, and so that's the thing I like about him. As an adult, the Marvel character that I like the most is Cable. In every iteration, Cable, for different reasons. Every iteration of Cable is in its own way problematic, and those problems are the story of Cable, and I like that. But
my knowledge of him is kind of restricted to Deadpool, but I loved him in that. So
right. Oh yeah, it was just a very different thing there, but it was still like still an accurate representation of who Cable is. The Exiles book, which I don't recommend going and picking up, because it is the like deep dive that pays you for having having dove so deep, is there's a whole series of books that Marvel did called What Ifs that started in the 70s, I want to say. And they were like, oh, what if this one character had this other character's power? Or what if these two people had never met? Or what if that person died? What if Uncle Ben didn't die? Like, what if these things happen? And
Yeah,
it's just
always
like, let's tell a story. What if these are slightly different? And then in the 90s or maybe aughts, I want to say, the Marvel started putting out a book called The Exiles. And The Exiles, they took a group of heroes that they divorced from their timelines. They said, okay, something happened and your timeline got messed up and you fell out of that timeline. And so it's all these heroes that we recognize but are different versions of themselves. And then they made them into this team that has to jump from these alternate different realities to try to fix the problems in those realities. And this book visits a bunch of those old what if realities and says, okay, here you are. Here's this what if reality that was set up. And now we're going to try to insert this other problem. It was some of the most clever comic book writing that was played on the fact that you can't just do this. Like it was like the TV show Sliders or something, except with first building up this giant mythology that can't exist without having built the mythology. So it was this super ambitious project that only works because of the nature of the medium. Anyway, I love it.
Well, fair enough. We got the What If series coming out for Disney Plus, and I must admit that's the one I've been looking forward to the most.
Of course, yeah.
Like, okay, yeah, I'll go. Not to, I mean, half because I like the What If style, but also half because it's animated. You can go so much more with animation, so like compared to a live action. All right, brilliant.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm very. There's a lot of cool stuff happening with the Disney Plus shows. I'm looking forward to seeing how it goes.
Yeah, so far so good. So hopefully they'll keep it up.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, Christopher, for that.
Honestly, my genuine pleasure.
Honestly, yeah, definitely. I mean, this is sounding really good, and to the point where it's like, okay, I thought like, because that was what I was worried about at first. About I've got all this stuff here. How much is changing? It's like, no, there's a decent amount changing, like enough. Whereas like, even if I play it, there's going to be stuff I notice that's different. And as I say, if it gives me a new incentive to say, right, you've been banging on about this game for so long, Luke, you're going to actually teach us it. Well, here you go. Try this version out.
Ideally, this will be an easier jumping on point. And plus, if you're introducing new players to this, it's easier than, okay, I've got the giant box. Like
that doesn't leave my house. Yeah.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah, so it ends up being mostly a solo game unless somebody comes around for it. So
fair enough.
Just because of that. All right, brilliant. So thanks for the time and that.
My pleasure. And hopefully I'll get to run into you at a convention or something in the future when those are real again.
When they're real, or if I can ever get to America, that's the hard bit.
Historically, I come out every year for UK Games Expo. I don't know if you go to that show.
Oh, yeah.
But 2020 was the first time I missed a UK Games Expo, and I will again continue to miss UK Games Expo again this year. I think that they said they're rescheduling it for the fall or something, but I'm
they're getting like a sort of smaller version for September, October time. No, August, September time, and it's like, I'll probably still be there for a mini show because I'm just desperate to get out. But
I'm just not going to travel internationally at that time frame. I'm going to do 2 or maybe 3 shows this year at most. I'm going to probably do Gen Con. I'm going to hope to do PAX Unplugged, and I might go to Essen. Maybe it really depends on how Germany does with everything. But
Games Expo in Essen's like the definitive every year on me. Although I'm still having to get to an American one at some point. It's just a logistical part because like, right, I need at least 2 weeks spare for this on top of the cash scene, and then which one do you pick?
Right. Well, maybe someday, and if not, I'll see you there or something. It'll work out.
Yeah, it will do.
So that was the whole interview in its entirety. I hope you got some enjoyment out of it and some useful information. Of course, if you have no interest in Sentinels and the Multiverse, that's okay. You don't have to love my favourite game. It's my favourite game. It might not necessarily be of any interest to you at all. That's fine. We all like different games. But if you have had any inkling about Sentinels and the Multiverse in the past, like, do I want to jump on it now when there's all this content in that, then honestly, this definitive edition I think is going to be the perfect jumping on point for you. And honestly, I can't recommend this game enough if you are a fan of superheroes or co-ops. If you catch me at a convention and you have a chance to learn this game, I will gladly teach you it, no questions asked. I love it that much. So that's it for me. I'll see you on the next Broken Meeple video. And remember, no matter how much you love something, it's still only a game. Bye for now.